Welcome to Season 4 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, lifelong helper, nonprofit founder, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to now be sharing these inspiring conversations on our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Today, our guest is Barry Braun, the founder of Happy Community Builders. Barry brings an insightful and inspiring message about what it means to be a community and what a happy community is and what each of our role is in making our communities better, which ultimately makes our world better. We are so excited today to have Barry Braun, the founder of the Happy Community Builders, with us today. Really excited to welcome him and hear his incredible journey and mission of building community, local communities, really, and bringing people together. So welcome, Barry. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Heidi, as well. You're doing great work for bringing these kind of stories out, and I really appreciate what you're doing as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we love telling these stories, and we love meeting beautiful humans that do beautiful work. And when I heard about what you're doing, I was like, oh my gosh, the world needs to know about this work. It's incredible. So why don't you begin by telling us a little about Happy Community Builders and kind of what happened in 2013 to get this all going?
Well, it started when I was becoming a grandfather. I was reflecting on my grandchildren's future. At that time, there was only one granddaughter, but now there's four. And
Congratulations.
Thanks. And the picture that was forming in my mind looked troubled to me. It didn't look like a happy picture. So I decided I wanted to do something about that. And it has been a journey to get from there to here. I started off by thinking that, well, who's making all the problems in the world? Let's get rid of those turkeys and replace them with somebody else.
Gee, who did you decide was making all the problems? Was it
old white
the
men?
attorneys, the politicians, old white men, the attorneys, right. The politicians? Where do we start?
Yeah, old white men. And I thought, well, okay, get rid of the old white men. Who's the best to put in place? So it's women. So I started this journey off as women reshaping the world. And that was a really interesting experience. We had 3 major conferences and very successful, lots of great attendance and that sort of stuff. But I found that they were asking me an important question at the end of the conferences. Okay, Barry, you got me here. Now what do I do? And I didn't have a good answer for them.
Because did you, you're like, I'm having a grandchild. I want to make the world better for my grandchild, but you didn't have a clear vision exactly on what that was?
No, it was definitely a walk into the blind, walk into the dark to see what happened.
Okay, I love that.
So from there, it evolved into, as my thinking went, well, okay, so communities are foundational to our well-being. We've always been in community. And it's only been in the last 40 plus years or so that we started to devalue the importance of community, where we started to place greater emphasis on self-reliance and personal gratification and that sort of stuff, and we started to lose our sense of responsibility to community. When I grew up, everybody who lived in the community felt a responsibility to keep the community a good place. Now,
well, and that's when you think about just as far as civilization goes, that's how it works. We all use our gifts to support the hive, right? To support the community.
Well, that's the way it's worked for millenniums,
right?
But not so much as today.
I would agree with that.
Today, it's more of well, they should. Somebody else should, the government particularly should fix all my problems, make me happy. All I need is a place to live and a shopping center close by, and everything's good.
Right, take care of me.
Yeah, and that doesn't. I don't think that's the future I want for my grandkids, because I think they're going to need more support than self-reliance. I think
so. You came up with the concept, forgive me for interrupting you, Barry, but you came up with the concept that community is going to be the cornerstone of whatever this is you're doing, which obviously
Yep.
Happy Community Builders is the name. But once you had the community piece, where did you go from there?
Well, it was starting off by understanding what a happy community actually is, what a high functioning community is, and it's pretty simple. The research says there's over 200 variables that affect community, but they all come down to a commonality, and that commonality is that people know each other, people have a sense of belonging with each other,
right?
And they look out and care for each other. Right? That's
Sounds pretty good to me, right?
Pretty
Sounds
simple,
pretty basic, right?
Yeah. So where I went from there was, well, how do you create these things? You know, if they're not that way now, how do you get people to remember communities like that? How do you rebuild that kind of community? And so I had developed a process. My background is coaching and cultural change with business.
Okay.
And
I was gonna say you're a big thinker. I can already you're a big picture thinker for sure.
Yeah, details always get in my way.
I get that. I get that.
So I created this process that was also a work in progress, but we've pretty much got it down to a science now, where we enable citizens in a community to follow a prescribed process where they shift the story of their community. So one of the things that I learned is that, like you and I, we each have our own personal story, and that personal story pretty much defines our behavior. We act
Correct.
according to our story.
Right.
But communities also have a story. So if you ask a half a dozen people where you live, tell me what's the story of our community here, you'll start seeing a commonality show up.
Interesting. I never thought about that, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. So awesome. So sometimes the story is nothing ever happens here. Sometimes it's divisive. Sometimes it's what an awesome place to live.
Right.
Right. And that pretty much guides the behavior of the citizens in the community. So if you wanted to shift a community, what I learned was you have to change the story of the community. And so we developed a process that ordinary citizens were able to actually take this process into their community. And over an 18-month to 24-month period, the story shifted and the community's attitude towards themselves shifted. And
wow. Wow. So that was like the strategy. Like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to we have this process created. We're going to take it in. Did you just have like a model community that you're like, I'm going to try it on this little town first? Or,
yeah.
And was it like an experiment, basically?
Absolutely.
You're an entrepreneur at the end of the day, and entrepreneurs, you don't know what you're starting till you start it. I mean, that's just that goes with just the territory of founding these organizations, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of blind faith that I could actually do this. And the first couple of tries, it semi-worked, but not really worked. But as we went through more communities, we got it down pretty solid as being able to work.
So in 2013, you start this, you have this idea and you start this. And when did you have your first kind of community experiment, so to speak? How long did it take you?
Well, 2013 was Women Reshaping the World. So it was about 2017, 2016, when I started bringing out the Happy Community Project process to communities. And so then COVID happened. We had great success, and then COVID happened and kind of went on a hiatus for a while because it was very hard.
Like the rest of the world, right?
Right. So that gave me time to sort of reflect on, well, my goal is changing this world for the benefit of my grandchildren, and my grandchildren aren't going to live where I live. They live about 1,200 and 3,000 miles from me.
Oh, wow.
And so they're coming to visit.
There's a lot of communities between 3,000 miles
exactly
between you two to change, right?
Yeah. So how
a lot of real estate, Barry.
There is. Yeah, absolutely. So how are they going to find one of these happy communities? And it's not going
Right.
to maybe be changing them one at a time,
Right.
right? So how does it get scalable? And from there, that's where happy community builders started showing up. So the idea of happy community builders is that community builders connect, share, and co-create in a sandbox of ideas so that they can be more effective at what they're actually doing now, but more importantly, empowered to take on a new vision for the future. and
Interesting. And
and
how do
so
you identify, or how do you find these people, or tell me how people come to you or get to you, or when
well,
they, I'm fascinated by all of this. This is fantastic.
So they're from around the world.
Okay.
We have 6 representatives from 6 countries at this point in time.
Wow, that's great.
And the Happy Community Builders actually only got launched in March of this year.
Right.
So we're making pretty good progress. And the way they find us, one is, that's one of the reasons I'm on your show, so they can find us.
Well, they'll find it from listening here, yes.
But also, we started off, the principle of the happy community process is you start with 1, you expand it to 5, 5 grows to 50, 50 grows to 500, et cetera, right?
Right.
And it grows more or less organically. And so that's what's happening right now with Happy Community Builders. There are people joining pretty much every day, and they're joining because other people have talked about what's going on at the Happy Community Builders and that they should be there too.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So whenever no one wakes up and says they're going to be a nonprofit founder. That isn't just, usually in the top list. And for you, it's kind of a second phase of your career, right? You've had this career, your grandfather, it's not like your everyday thing that you take on something as big as what you're trying to do, which is basically change the world.
Absolutely.
Which I love. Like I said, I love a big thinker, Barry. You are my people. You and I are the same, trying to change the world as best we can. One organization, one group at a time. But what have been some of the challenges you've run into? I mean, obviously COVID stopped the progress. You were on a path. But what are some of the challenges in doing this work? Because you're taking on it's a big project.
It is a big project, and it's filled with disappointment because things never work out the way I hope or expect. But
that's just life, right?
But
what have been some of the challenges?
There always seems to be something good happening to say, okay, I'll try it one more time.
Welcome to the nonprofit world, Barry. That's just exactly the way it works. That's pretty much it. You just want to, some days, I think, as I have collected what I call the helpers, you being one of them, of the world, I think one of the biggest challenges that all of us have encountered is when we realize we can't take care of everybody. The need will always be greater than we can meet. It doesn't matter if you're a hunger organization, education, healthcare, whatever you do in the spectrum of helping people, you can't meet the need. And I think that is.
I actually disagree with that, Heidi.
Oh, tell me why. I love that.
Well, when we first started off as humans, we lived in tribes. We lived in a community, right?
Right.
And we didn't have those problems that we have today. We didn't have hunger and homelessness and depression and poverty and that sort of stuff. Or if one person was poverty, everybody was, but generally speaking, it wasn't. So the way my thinking has evolved is all of what we're experiencing now is a construct of what humans have created for themselves. And
interesting.
And there is well, I'm just reading a book. Forget the author's name. It's called Abolitionists. I'm sorry that I don't remember the name for the
That's
author.
That's quite all right.
So you probably heard of get defund the police,
Right.
right? Well, her book is about that, but it's not really about that. It's about rethinking the relationship inside communities. So rather than uh, having professionals solve all problems, police come in and deal with mental health or
Right.
family violence or strife or something to go on with poverty or something like that. Why not restructure things so that those things are taken care of more or less by the community itself,
Right. Right.
right? And
That makes
so
sense. And yeah, go
so
ahead.
that's one thread of thinking that somebody else has, which is very much aligned with my own thread of thinking.
Right. Well,
Uh,
when you think about, I mean, even in my work, I deal with, obviously I run a small local nonprofit, but I
yep,
really I collect local heroes. I mean, really, to me, the grassroots nonprofits are the community helpers that we're talking about, the community builders that we're talking about, the
yep,
ones that want to help the need in their own community, not necessarily that are going out to solve worldwide hunger.
yep,
And so those to me are like the heroes that identify a
yep,
problem in their own community and try to fix it, which is you and I are trying to cultivate. You're trying to cultivate those people in a bigger way. I'm trying to share their stories, but you're trying to cultivate their work.
absolutely. And you mentioned oh shoot, I forget what said I was going to mention. So here's where you're going to edit something out for a second.
That's all right. That's quite all right. Well, about the challenges, we're talking about what the
Yeah.
challenges are in
Well,
this work. And we were talking
yeah.
about the abolitionist, and we were talking about
Yeah.
the
So
thinking of taking care of things in their community. Oh, you disagreed with my line of thought
yeah.
about that's where
Yeah.
it started.
So so one of the thoughts that I have is well, I was telling you about the Happy Community Project, how we can make a community more connected, belonging, and caring. And the way that happens is with the community story. Well, we live in a bigger story, and the bigger story is upside down. So what would happen in our world if the most important thing that government, business, and the ordinary citizen focused on is the well-being of community? What would it look like,
Be a great place. Be a
right?
lot
Like,
better.
yeah, would we have all the problems that we got right now? Uh,
Yeah.
right?
No. Nope.
No, I don't think so. So my biggest ambition is to join people like the abolitionist with the Happy Community Builders and other thought leaders like that, and start shifting what we think about as really important. So most people, most citizenry actually know and believe that things are not right, that
Correct.
we got things wrong. And when I say, if your community was more belonging, caring, and connected with each other, you'd have a happy community. There's not very many people that argue with me about that,
Correct.
right?
That makes sense.
So why isn't this on the front of government policy, business processes, and how we as citizens are empowered ourselves? Um, and so the idea of happy community builders is to start moving us in that direction by collecting other community builders who share their ideas with each other, co-create new ideas on how to solve the problems that they see as intractable right now, but also collectively gathering our voice together to start shifting how we
Right.
actually think about community. And that's really what Happy Community Builders is for.
Well, I think that that's brilliant. So are you creating also, so if I decide I want to be a part of the Happy Community Builders and I look at my local community and I see all the challenges that you've mentioned,
Yep,
crime, homelessness, hunger, all the things that
yep.
mental illness, all the things, the laundry
Loneliness,
list that with
whatever.
loneliness, isolation, the list that goes on that every community
Yeah.
has. Um, and I go onto your website at,
Yeah.
Happy Community Builders, and I find it. What will happen to me then? How do I get connected, and what resource do I have, and what's the process that I would go through to be a part of that?
So it's really simple. You go to happycommunitybuilders.com and
Right.
register. So that's the first step. But when you're on Happy Community Builders, you'll find that there's a pile of resources that you can use today to help you with what you're doing. So there's that Happy Community Builders is filled up with professionals like yourself who are working in community to try and make it better. And they each know things that are special. They have expertises. So they're sharing their expertises in workshops, and we record those workshops. And so there's a library of their workshops on how to do this and how to do that
Oh, that's
in
great.
community. There's also a library of ideas. So a library of inspiration or brain food, where
Right.
you can go and see what other community builders are finding in their reading lists that they find helpful. We're just setting up a library of forms. So as a community builder, you have to make applications to this and that, and find
Right.
non-disclosure agreements or whatever you
Right.
need to do.
Right.
So
The
we're
legal
creating that
stuff.
library so you don't have to invent it all over again. It's going to be there. Uh, and then there are forums, special interest forums. So
So you
happy
can join a group and talk to
you
and
join,
have conversations.
you can join a group, you can form a group. So if you have a special interest, say your special interest is, I don't know, what's one that we haven't got yet? uh,
And you throw one out. I can't even think about how
yeah.
many things. I mean, is it a
Well,
problem, like a homelessness problem? Would that be a special
homeless,
interest?
yeah, that would be a special interest. But it also could be the special interest of your community itself. So it could be my town community, happy community interest, right?
Got it.
And so anybody who's interested in making your town happier can be part of that special group. But it also could be, as some have done, and formed groups around isolation, for example. So how do you get the
That's a
isolated
great one.
out of their closets and into the community? And they have come up as a brainstorming process, come up with ideas that they're now implementing in communities wherever they can find the communities that are interested in them. Uh,
Oh, I love that.
uh, here in
That's
Canada,
fantastic.
First Nations is a really hot topic. We haven't treated our First Nations people well in the past. And there's this thing called reconciliation that's going on here in Canada.
Yeah, we have it in the United States too. Everyone's talking about it.
Okay, so we have First Nations people who are creating the 13 Grandmothers Talking Circle, which
Oh,
is First Nations and non-Aboriginal people getting
right.
in a call once a month to share thoughts about each other's community around topics. So
Interesting.
our own form of reconciliation.
Well, I think that's super cool. So I mean, you've taken on just a ginormous task. And, I always say, like, the bucket is heavy. To me, at the end of when you start something, ultimately it's your bucket. You share
Yep,
it with a lot of people, but
yep,
it's yours at the end of the day. And we all have lives and challenges and things that are happening in our own lives that we're dealing with. And this work is hard. You
yes.
don't change the world. It's not easy. So what fuels you to keep doing this? What fuels you
Uh,
when the bucket's heavy and you
when
think,
I
"Oh my gosh, what have I started? Like, how am I going to keep doing this?"
when I see progress. So, and one of the really exciting things right now, especially around Happy Community Builders, is we seem to have reached this place where, you go down this, the hockey stick curve, you know that one. Uh, things seem to be flat, nothing's much happening for a long time, and then you reach this inflection point, and all of a sudden lots starts happening.
Right.
Well, Happy Community Builders is now at the inflection point, and and the bucket is heavy. It's not as heavy as it was
Oh,
because there are a lot of people who are stepping up. and carrying the weight. So this is
I love that.
Happy Community Builders is a platform that's for happy community builders and basically owned by happy community builders, at least in my mind. Uh, and uh, and so so it's their platform, and they're making it happen. They're the ones that are providing all this huge resource and sharing ideas with each other, and finding new ideas and opportunities and initiating things. So it's really exciting.
You've kind of set the table, and you've given them all the tools in the kitchen, and you're letting them make their meal. Is kind of
Yeah, that's mostly what it is. I'm still I'm still in the background doing lots of stuff. I don't have much
there's a
spare
lot that
time.
goes on to maintaining a worldwide table, for sure. So tell me some of the successes that you've had.
Well, so the ones that I'm really excited about the First Nations reconciliation that's showing up in Happy Community Builders. I think that's a really cool thing, and
That's super cool.
that's a big surprise that I never expected. It just showed up. Uh, um, there's another group that's working on on uh, um, intergenerational connectedness.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we've been thinking of Here's an idea that I've come to believe from my experience. Some people will disagree with me, but from my experience, this is what I've learned. When we say the word community, it means that it's the people who are like us around us. And mostly the people that are talking are people like yourself and myself who are economically contributing to the community and are, I was going to say younger. I'm not so younger anymore, but
I wouldn't question that, Barry. You seem pretty young to me. Young is just an attitude. It's not a number.
Yeah. So so that's who we normally think of as community. And then when we talk about seniors and young people, we see them as sort of fringe to the community. We see them as a problem that needs to be fixed. Old people are isolated and lonely. How do we fix that?
Right.
Young people aren't engaged in the community. How do we fix that? We don't actually see them as central to the community, right? They are fringe to the community. And that's part of storytelling, and that is dumb story as far as I'm concerned. The older people are the people who created this community. They're the ones that brought us from someplace to here. The young people are the ones that are going to be taking the community over and taking it from here to there. They are part of the community. They are important parts of the community. So intergenerational connectedness to me is not this separation of young, middle, and old, but is
it's bringing them together.
Right. Yeah. So
taking down the silos where you're having at nursery schools.
So when I grew up a long time ago, I went to a 2-room school. One of the rooms was a playroom and the other room was a classroom. And there were 5 grades in the classroom. So the teacher, we had one teacher, and she was teaching all 5 grades at once. And it was an incredibly rich experience because as a grade 1 and grade 2, I could be listening to what she was teaching the grade 5 students. When we went out to play, we all played together. There weren't the old kids and the young kids. There were all kids playing on the skating rink or on the baseball diamond or whatever we were playing at.
Right.
And I found that an incredibly rich experience. And I feel sad for the kids today that, well, great. If you're 6 years old, you can only play with 6 and 7-year-olds. You can't play with 8 and 9-year-olds.
Right.
Right.
Right. I agree with that. I use leadership organization. A huge piece of what we do is mentoring, and it's peer to peer. Our college kids teach our high school kids. Our high school kids teach middle school kids, and we serve 3,000 students a year with 2 employees. But we do that by exactly what we're talking about. It's all this peer mentoring, and it's successful because kids want to be with older kids and they learn.
And they do.
Them.
Yeah, and the older kids find it a lot of fun too. I mean, they're being important. They're doing something, right? Useful for younger kids, and so those things we good on you that that's happening for you. Uh,
It is. It's a lot of work, but it's happening.
yeah, and that's awesome, but that isn't normal. That's not
Yeah,
common, right?
I know.
And
I agree with that. So
and I
so happy community builders are really bringing generations together. Is another place where people are coming together.
we are. Uh, we are. I don't see what does community mean if there aren't babies, toddlers, uh, uh, young starting school, middle school, high school,
Right.
university, young
All
adults
levels.
starting families, all that sort of stuff, and then old people, the elders in the end, right?
Right.
What kind of a sad community is that? And that's that if it doesn't have that sort of stuff. And yet we've devalued all of that. And so happy community builders, that's one of the focus points of building it. You can't build a happy community without having intergenerational connectedness. I can't see
I
how you can do it anyway.
No, I think I think that's fantastic. So you're obviously a big dreamer, and obviously, so if you could dream any dream for your organization, I think you probably have the answer for this one. What does that look like? What is the biggest dream that you could dream for this?
That uh, our governments, our business, and our citizenry would all put community well-being at the first of their list of things that are important.
I like that. I like that a lot. Wow. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a
So
doozy, Barry. It's a
it
good one,
is,
but
it is, but I recently challenged the politician on some of this stuff. A senior politician, the politicians here in Canada, so it might go a little easier here in Canada because our
yeah,
politics are
might.
different there. But here's a really simple first step that politicians could take, if there's any politicians out there listening. One of the things that I've noticed is that citizens don't take up their responsibility as citizens caring for their community, not because they don't want to, but because they're afraid to. They feel they're going to get in trouble if they
Right.
start doing something good.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
And so the challenge I made to this politician as a first step is, you guys make lots of laws and the laws keep telling us what not to do. How about making a law that says it's okay to do? And so how about making a law that if I intended to do good and things didn't work out, like here in Canada, we shovel snow.
Right.
If somebody was shoveling the snow for the neighbor and somebody else came along and slipped on it, my intentions were good, I'm exempt from lawsuits or criminal acts, right? If my intention was to do good,
Right.
then I can't be sued and I can't go to jail, right? Just making a law like that would take a great burden off the fear that people have of actually doing something.
Right. I think that is really brilliant. And talk about a mind shift. I mean, when I think about all of um the times I have three sons and in their 20s, and when we were saying like, you can't give the keys to the car to somebody else, you know that what could happen to us, we could be sued for this, or you can't let somebody else drive that boat, or
Yep.
all of those things, putting fear in them because of lawsuits and responsibilities. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I can just hear my own voice telling my son so many things like that.
Yeah. And that's the culture we built. That's the story that we created for our society. It's a
Right.
society of fear of doing good because we could get into trouble for doing good.
Right.
Uh,
Isn't that
uh,
fascinating how that's shifted so much with um, just the legal culture that's built up over all these years? It is
yeah,
really crazy. Because when I grew up, and when I grew up, there weren't billboards saying 1-800 the lawyer, or
right.
they didn't exist everywhere. Every bus didn't say, you
Yeah,
know, to call this
park,
ambulance chaser or whoever it
yeah,
was,
park benches and
you know,
whatever, right?
right,
And
exactly. That's
uh,
changed a lot. And so I think it's also been part of changing our culture.
yeah.
So, I mean, what you've decided to change the world for the better for your grandchildren. And what life lessons have you learned since taking this on and starting this journey in 2013? Almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, one, it's hard.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Patience is important.
Yes.
Something I didn't have very much of, but I've learned to have a little bit more of it.
You're going to change
Um,
the world. It's going to take some time, Barry. So you're going to have to be patient just a little bit.
yeah. So I think those are the two biggest lessons. But I've also learned. I think there's an even bigger lesson I've learned. I've learned that people actually want a different world. And the only thing that's keeping them from having that different world is their own fear. And if we can tap into the people who want the world different, which is actually most people, I think,
Right. I agree.
and keep them safe, they will become a very powerful force to make our world a better place. And that's what I've also learned, because we've shown that it can happen at the community level. We've taken a community of 20,000 people and completely changed the mindset of the 20,000 people
Wow.
to ones of where they reach out to each other when they would be hesitant to reach out to somebody, actually look out for each other. They actually look for somebody else's problems to see how they might help, rather than looking the other way, which is what they used to do. So if we can do that on that scale, then why can't we do it on a much bigger scale? And that's one of the biggest lesson I think I've learned.
I think that's pretty incredible. And how do you think you've changed in all of this? Do you think it's shifted? Do you think you've become more compassionate, more cynical, more joyful? What do you think has happened in this 10 years that you've been on this mission?
Well, I think I've learned how to have a better sense of humor about things that would make me angry, but I don't know that. But I don't know that my anger is any real less. I just laugh about it a little bit more. Uh, so, how else have I changed? Oh, um, I don't know really how to answer that question well, other than I think I've been able to. Well, I guess there is another change that's happened to me, and that is I've become much more intensely focused on doing what I'm doing. So when I'm in a crowd for socialization,
Right.
I'm a lot less social than I used to be.
Now you
The
need to take a
baseball.
page out of your own book, Barry. I mean, come on. You're building happy communities and you're telling me you're becoming isolated? That's not going to work. We can't have that now, can we?
No. Well, really good point. I don't think I'm isolated, but the baseball game statistics from last night aren't as interesting to me as they might have been.
So do you think when you think about your granddaughter, who initially was the
Abby,
conceptual
yeah,
idea for this whole thing in 2013,
yeah.
do you think that the world she's living in is getting better? Do you think you're seeing progress or have hope?
Well, I have hope, but it's probably got a pessimistic side to it, because I am seeing. Um, I'm watching our neighbors to the south, you people in the United
Yes,
States,
yes, yes.
and I don't see that going in a happy direction from where I
Mm,
can tell. And
yeah,
if you guys don't go in a happier direction, you're going to drag at least Canada down with you, and probably a lot of the rest of the world. And so
I hear
I,
that.
I, 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 I really, really hope, and I believe it's possible, but I really, really hope that the citizenry of the United States can want a different future than the way that their their politicians are building for them right now. And I'm not. That's
I hope so too. I really do. And I do agree with you, Barry, that people want it. I think they're afraid with they don't know where to start. I get a lot of questions all the time. I want to make a difference. I don't know how to start. Where do I begin? There's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation. People don't know what to do, where to go. So I love, though, that you are giving, regardless of what organization or what your passion is, you're giving them tools and connective resources to take those tools to the organization. So if your passion is cancer, or your passion is homelessness, or your passion is, you can still go to Happy Community Builders and find the resources to help that passion.
Yeah, and like all really good communities, hopefully you have something to give back to Happy Community Builders as well, in terms of what you know, the knowledge and skills that you have.
Well, that's the perfect setup for my question, which is my last question, which is how and where can we support you? So tell us your website, where you are on social media, where we can donate, where we can support, where we can find out how we can be part of a happy community.
Sure. So the short answer is happycommunitybuilders.com. That should answer most questions.
Okay.
Happycommunitybuilders.com. People can follow me personally on LinkedIn at Barry Braun, and Braun is spelled like the razor, B-R-A-U-N. And I'd like to leave people with the idea that, I'm trying to take on a really grandiose thing, but that's not what's going to change the world. What's going to change the world is them doing something in their local community that makes it a better community, no matter what it is. And when enough communities become happier communities, that can become our new culture. That can be the way that is normal again. And that's, so my thought is, communities aren't places to take from. They're not places where you go to get, but they're a place where you are interdependent with each other, exchanging with each other. And so bringing that attitude into the community is a good start. And how to do that? Well, you can find that on happycommunitybuilders.com. You can get all kinds of support there to figure out how you can get started with that.
I love that. Barry, if there isn't, I can't think of a better conversation to inspire people to roll up their sleeves, to get involved with their communities, to make a difference, because you always get more when you give. You get so much more back. You get that connectedness we talked about. You get that joy you get from service. You get all of those wonderful things. It's a super addictive. So I'm just telling you, you'll make new friends in the process, and your life is so much better. The more you get, the more you give, the more you get. And
absolutely.
And I love what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for sharing about all this incredible work you're doing to make our world better.
Well, thank you, Heidi, for it. Ditto on you. You're doing the same thing, making the world better. And I really thank you for doing that as well. So thank you. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Barry. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to our guest, Barry Braun, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think Barry's comment about community, connectedness, happiness, and what it means to be part of a community was so inspiring and true. To learn more about modern-day heroes like Barry, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love this if you shared it with your friends and family. Please leave us a review and don't forget to subscribe. And remember that together we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity Matters.